The swivel chair shot across the classroom like a missile, trailing a smear of smoke and the unmistakable stench of scorched plastic. It slammed into the wall with a hollow thunk. Vince McKinnon staggered out of the wreckage of his desk, coughing through the haze, brushing dust off his tattered school-issue vest to reveal a faded Metallica shirt beneath. Newton's third law, he croaked, grinning like someone who had pulled this stunt more than once. Every action, he gestured toward the chair still smoldering against the wall, comes with an equal and opposite reaction. For the first time in weeks, half the class actually looked up from their glowing datapads. Even the Valassian in the back row, a pile of living rock who expressed feelings by grinding stone against stone, emitted a noise that might have been applause. For him, that was basically a standing ovation. "That was kinda sick," muttered Dante Reeves from his corner seat. 17 years old, all slouched limbs and cultivated indifference, Dante had perfected the art of looking like he didn't care while secretly soaking up every detail. "Kinda sick," Vince repeated, eyes sparking. "That, my friend, was science. That was the cosmos itself yelling back when I strapped a rocket engine to cheap furniture." He paused to fan smoke away. "Also, reminder, don't try this at home. Or here. Or anywhere with a fire marshal." "Isn't that the third chair you've blown up?" asked Specs, a dolphin-featured girl who managed to radiate skepticism even through gills and sleek skin. "Fourth," Vince corrected cheerfully. "But who's counting?" "Well, besides accounting, and Principal Torrington, and possibly station safety." He leaned over, finally noticing a knot of students clustered around a glowing datapad in the back. "What are you hiding from me?" he asked. The group scattered as if he'd caught them smuggling contraband, which, at Terminus Theta Secondary, could range from illicit fireworks to last year's exam keys. But Vince's reflexes were honed from a youth spent dodging thrown wrenches in Detroit chop shops. He snatched the pad before they could blink. "The Terminus Terror Run," he read aloud, eyebrows climbing toward his grease-smudged hairline. "The Death Race? The annual insanity where kids strap boosters onto ships and tear through the station's superstructure praying not to explode. That one?" The classroom broke into a bitter laugh. "That's for the rich schools," Dante muttered, sinking lower in his chair. "We're the gutter kids. We don't get invited to crash billion-credit spaceships." For once, Vince didn't grin. His expression flickered, surprise, calculation, and then that familiar dangerous smile, the one students whispered about like it was a loaded weapon. "Wrong," he said. "We're Death Welders. They don't make us skip safety checks because we're expendable. They do it because we're the best at surviving when everything goes to hell." The class went quiet. A few heads tilted, uncertain whether to laugh. Vince was already bouncing on his heels, eyes alight with an idea. Principal Torrington's office looked like it had fought 3 wars and lost 2. Peeling motivational posters sagged on the walls, his desk wore coffee rings like battle honors. Vince bounced outside the door, listening to a parade of denials. New beakers? Denied. Computer parts? Denied. Gravity for the gym? Absolutely not. When he was finally waved in, the principal didn't bother with pleasantries. "No," he said, before Vince could open his mouth. "You don't even know the ask." "I know you," Torrington groaned. "If you're vibrating, it costs money, risks lives, or both." "What if it's educational?" "No." "Boosts engagement?" "No." "Hands-on physics, chemistry, engineering, school spirit, civic." McKen, he pinched the bridge of his nose. "Which part of no is confusing, the N or the O?" "The Terminus Terror Run," Vince blurted, before he could be escorted out. "Let me enter a team." The principal actually laughed, dry, humorless. "You want to throw my students into a race that only looks safe on legal waivers? You know what the elite schools spend? Apex's pilot program dwarfs our budget. And even if I indulged you, you need a ship. A fast one. With shields, engines that don't explode, navigation that navigates." "From where, exactly?" "The ship ferry." "Funny you mention it," Vince said, smile sharpening. Inventory archives list a decommissioned Stingray interceptor from the station's early days. Munitions Bay 7. Torrington's face cycled through several alarming shades. That isn't a ship. It's a monument to bad choices. It's been molding there for 53, Vince said. Give or take. No engines. No nav. No life support. Details, Vince chirped. The principal stood to loom. Vince kept grinning. Finally, a heavy sigh, the sound of a man signing his own regret. All right. You want impossible? Here are the terms. Make that relic mission capable in 7 days. No purchases, salvage or scratch built only. And you sign every liability, injury, death, or accidental rift to a less convenient dimension. Deal. Deal. And deal. Vince snatched the dusty form and flourished a signature before more conditions could materialize. I already regret this, Torrington muttered as Vince bounced out. But when the door shut, a reluctant smile tugged at one corner of his mouth. Maybe. Maybe not. Back in 47B, Vince moved faster than the day he'd smothered a flaming demo with a laminated periodic table. Ladies, gentlemen, and all varieties of sapiens, we're in. Silence hit like vacuum. Even the vents held their breath. That's not funny, Tommy said. Not a joke. Vince threw a ragged holo on the ancient projector. Meet our ride, Stingray Security Interceptor, circa 2271. Great bones. 0 organs. Specs pupils dilated as the schematics rotated. Kix brightened, literally, as she traced stress tolerances. Those numbers are wild, Kix murmured. Even 80% of spec and she'll hold. The sensor suite is prehistoric, specs clicked, but the architecture's clean. With creative coding. Are those Class C hardpoints? Tommy breathed. Decommissioned. Inoperative. Absolutely impossible to reactivate within race rules, Vince said. Probably. This is insane, Dante said flatly. You want us to race a 50-year-old corpse against schools that bathe in money? 53, Vince corrected. And yes. Unless you'd rather spend a week being told what you can't do. Something flickered behind Dante's practiced boredom. Not belief, yet, but hunger. Where is it? Griselda rumbled, hope hiding in the gravel. Munitions Bay 7, Vince replied. Field trip. The bay doors fought them, shedding rust-like glitter as Vince cranked them open by hand. Inside, the Stingray waited, more memory than metal. Panels dangled like broken teeth. Through the hull, the ghost of an engine leered. It's dead, Dante said. A cadaver. It's a project, Vince countered, circling like a kid who'd found a forbidden toy. Look at those lines. They don't build frames like this anymore. They stopped for reasons, Specs muttered. Kix pressed a stony palm to a rib and listened. Core structure is sound. Over-engineered by at least 40%. It'll take a beating. Dante scrubbed grime from a corroded housing and froze. A faded emblem glimmered through. Mark thrusters, he whispered. Top shelf. Pro racing once upon a time. Someone loved her, Vince said softly. Before she was shelved. She's still a wreck, Griselda reminded him, though the certainty was weakening. Thermodynamics, Lesson 1, Vince said, fishing a battered wrench from a relic toolkit. He tossed it. Dante caught it without thinking. Energy isn't created or destroyed, just transferred. He nodded toward the Stingray. Let's transfer some rust into a trophy. Dante weighed the wrench, then the ship, then the lunatic teacher who refused to stop smiling. You're serious? 7 days. No budget. Salvage and stubbornness. Vince's grin widened. Impossible? Perfect. Kix looked around at the semicircle of kids who had never been accused of sensible choices. Where do we start? Vince pointed at the empty tool rack. First, we're going to need a lot more wrenches. Overnight, Classroom 47B mutated into something between a scrapyard shrine and a control center. Yesterday it had been a dreary room with wobbling desks and flickering lights. Now it buzzed like a hive, students yelling measurements over the squeal of saws, sparks raining from jury-rigged welds, old terminals balanced on crates. Force vectors! Vince shouted over the noise. Dante, what happens if we dump 4,000 newtons of lift into 6 tons of rock? Depends which rock, Dante muttered, hands buried in the half-dead engine guts. His slouch was gone, every motion had a sharpness to it, like he'd finally found a puzzle worth solving. 6,243 kilos, Kit called, her crystalline body humming as she literally fused herself into the frame to reinforce it. 44, 45, she added, bracing struts with pieces scavenged from 3 different wrecks. Stop bolting junk on her, Dante snapped at Tommy. It's armor, man. Tommy insisted, welding another jagged plate to the hull. We need to fly, not cosplay a tank, Dante shot back, but he didn't stop working the thrusters, fingers dancing like a virtuoso. In her corner, Specs hunched over a jury-rigged console, sonar pulses echoing as she rewired 3 mismatched harnesses. These connectors weren't designed to talk to each other, she muttered. So I told the computer they were best friends. It believes me now. That's not how electricity works, Kix said flatly. Specs smirked. It is today? Meanwhile, Griselda sat wedged in a navigation pod. Her massive crystalline plates pulsed faintly as she closed her eyes. The station hums, she growled softly. The power grid flows through its bones. I can feel the conduits. The bends. Even when maintenance cycles shift. You're saying you can fly this thing by listening to the station's heartbeat? Vince asked. Not just fly, she replied. I can see paths no map remembers. Vince froze, then broke into another of those weaponized smiles. Griselda, you magnificent geode, you've just given us a map no one else has. For 3 days they lived in grease and adrenaline. And then, on the 5th morning, Vince arrived to find his crew gathered around wreckage. The Stingray sagged against the bay wall, a giant with its spine snapped. The steering array, the one piece they couldn't replace, was mangled beyond recognition. Mounting clamps were cut, Dante said, voice low and sharp. Had to be last night. When the other teams were stress-testing engines, vibrations shook her free. Apex? Tommy asked. He didn't need an answer. Security footage loops, Specs reported bitterly. However it knew exactly where the cameras wouldn't see. Vince surveyed the twisted metal, his grin finally gone. 2 days left. No money. No parts. No chance. Then he clapped his hands together. All right, he said brightly. New lesson, aggressive resource acquisition. The class blinked at him. You mean stealing? Pix ventured. Stealing is such a nasty word, Vince replied. I'd prefer surprise borrowing. Or maybe practical education in supply chain management. That's still stealing, Griselda rumbled. Sure, Vince said. But it's for science. This time, when Dante looked up, there was no trace of his old indifference. His eyes burned. What do you need me to do? Vince's grin turned predatory. How do you feel about piloting a maintenance drone at 2 in the morning? They called it Operation Turnabout is fair play. At 0200, while most of the station slept, a battered maintenance drone zipped into Apex Academy's ventilation shafts. Their workshop was a fortress, bristling with scanners and locks, but those defenses were built to catch rival teams with credit accounts, not a human teacher who grew up hot wiring cars in the ruins of Detroit. Specs, you're on eyes. Jam their feeds, Vince whispered into his comm. Already looping last week's footage, she chirped. Tommy, make some noise. With pleasure. Griselda, keep watch. Dante. I know, the boy cut in, his hands already coaxing the drone through razor-thin vents. Small. Fast. Invisible. On the monitor, the little machine wove between laser grids with impossible grace. Target acquired, Dante reported, camera panning to a pristine steering module worth more than their entire classroom. Liberating now. At that exact moment, Tommy's distraction bloomed, chemical smoke canisters flooding Apex's east wing like a synthetic volcano. Alarms shrieked. Security scattered. Nobody noticed the drone slip back into the night, turning their prize through a hatch that shouldn't even exist. Back in Bay 7, the Stingray was reborn. The replacement array fit, barely. Griselda traced stolen schematics with her claw, murmuring about forgotten power conduits that carved secret arteries through the station's bones. Shortcut, Dante whispered, eyes widening as he grasped the implication. A path no one else knows. Exactly, Vince said. And this old beast was built to survive more heat than any of their polished toys. By the final night, the wreck was something else entirely. With its mismatched panels, glowing weld scars, and stubborn frame, the rechristened dog looked like a fevered dream that refused to die. Systems check became a roll call of miracles. Engines, probably stable, Dante said, gripping controls like they belonged to him. Structure, 70%, but I've welded myself into the frame, Kix reported, crystalline limbs fused with steel. Defenses are, let's call them, non-offensive enhancements, Tommy said with a grin. Nav online, specs confirmed, antennae twitching. And yes, I left a few surprises in the countermeasures. I have memoized the hidden currents, bumbled Griselda. The vents will obey me. Vince looked around at his grease-streaked crew, kids who had been written off as failures, now vibrating with focus. They call you junkyard dogs like it's an insult, he said softly. But dogs survive. They fight. They never quit. Let's show them what that means.